Let's get a check of the top business news stories. Our business editor, Kate Moody, is here. Hi there, Kate.
Hi, Tom.
Let us begin with the ongoing controversy between the Chinese government and a number of international fashion brands. Bring us up to speed.
Well, this weekend, a number of H&M stores in China were reportedly closed by authorities, and the smartphone apps for H&M, Adidas, Nike, and some other brands have been blocked from Chinese app stores. The spat centers around the company's decision not to use cotton grown in China's western Xinjiang Province because of concerns about human rights abuses there. The US and EU have recently imposed sanctions over reports of forced labor among the Uighur Muslim minority. Last week, Chinese social media began circulating H&M's statement on the matter, originally issued last year, and that sparked a movement to boycott the brands in question in China. On Monday, Chinese officials warned international firms not to engage in politics.
Some people in the United States are not only stigmatizing cotton from Xinjiang, but also seriously undermining the region's cotton planting and the economic interests of the whole of China. They're even attempting to pit the Chinese people against the government. It's malicious.
Let's speak now to Allyson Stewart-Allen. She's the founder and CEO of the International Marketing Partners in London. Thanks for joining us on France 24. Tell me, what's your sense on how deep this crisis is going to go? Will it be permanently damaging for the likes of H&M in China, or can they build back their consumer base there?
Well, it's going to very much depend on the Chinese government's position. And I think one of the lessons for H&M and Nike and Adidas and all of these brands that have been affected is that you better know the landscape, the political landscape, before you go. And in the case of China, I'm sure these brands had no idea that things would escalate to this degree. And I guess the question is, can they come back? And that will really very much depend on the diplomacy of the countries behind the brands. And so one other lesson here, therefore, is that, when you represent a brand, such as these American brands, H&M, a Scandinavian brand, you also represent the country of origin in a lot of ways of them. And so this is really a diplomatic situation because of the aligned pressure being applied by the US, UK, EU, Canada on China because of the allegation of Uyghur forced labor in processing that cotton. And brands need to take a stand. These brands are taking a stand. And clearly it isn't popular in China at the moment. Can they come back? Possibly. But I think this is going to be a long-term situation, and I don't see any immediate fix because diplomacy takes a long time.
So to that end, do you think that this might be a turning point for international brands in China? Will we see more brands saying they don't want to do business there anymore, despite the potential for growth, because of issues like human rights standards?
I think so. And I think the expectation now of consumers, certainly in the West, of the brands that they purchase from, is that those brands do take a stand, that they do have an ESG policy, environment, societal, and governance. And there is now that expectation increasingly that brands speak up, CEOs speak up. So, yes, I do think that some brands will forfeit that opportunity, perhaps temporarily, in an effort to make a statement about working conditions. And I think that's actually progress. This level of transparency because of social media means that all of us as consumers can now apply that pressure and scrutinize what companies do.
As a marketing expert, how should companies go about taking a stand on social or environmental issues these days? How do they decide which areas to wade into?
Well, what a very good question. And I think it really boils back down to the values of the business and the leaders of the business defending those values. What do we as a brand believe in? What do we think is just? And stand up for that. And that is usually codified in a company's, it's on its website, it's at the lifts and the elevators inside its buildings, and it's in the ether, ideally, and it's lived rather than just jargon and, a nice polish on top of what really gets done. So the brands that live these values need to demonstrate they live them, and the employees are expecting that, and the customers are expecting that. So the pressure's only mounting for brands to be assertive and defend what they think is important.
All right, Allyson Stewart-Allen, thanks so much for joining us this evening. Well, shipping traffic has resumed in the Suez Canal after salvage teams managed to free a huge container ship which had blocked the waterway for nearly a week. More than 10% of global trade passes through that nearly 200-kilometer-long canal, and it's also a crucial source of income for Egypt's economy. Data suggest Egypt has already lost over $95 million in toll fees in the past week. Analysts say that week-long bottleneck affected companies around the world.
What I think this probably goes to show is the fragility, perhaps, of the global supply chain. I mean, this is a very significant maritime artery, one of only two major canals in the world that operate in this way in terms of moving ships from one ocean to another. You've got to remember that 90% of the world's goods are moved by ship. That's why the maritime industry is still so incredibly important for global trade.
Moving on to some of the day's other business headlines now. Nearly 6,000 workers at a warehouse in Alabama are voting on whether to form a union. After a 5-month-long campaign, Monday is the last day of voting. Results are expected in the next week or so. While some Amazon employees are already union members and indeed called strikes over working conditions during the pandemic, this would be the first Amazon site in the U.S. to be fully unionized. Boeing shares have risen over 3% after Southwest Airlines added 100 orders for its 737 MAX plane. It's a vote of confidence in the manufacturer and its beleaguered model, which was grounded around the world for 20 months after 2 deadly crashes killed 346 people. Southwest said the order reflected its optimism in the medium-term future of the industry and underscored advantages of the revamped plane, including quieter engines and better fuel efficiency. And the United States has warned it could impose a 25% tariff on some UK goods in retaliation for new taxes on tech giants. Other countries that push ahead with a tax on the so-called GAFA companies could also be affected. The Biden administration has said it's in favor of a global framework to deal with tech taxes rather than a piecemeal approach. And Tom, the Biden administration has eased some trade tensions with allies, notably the UK and the EU, but it has maintained Donald Trump's tariffs on China, and it appears maintaining that tough line when it comes to Silicon Valley.
Okay, well, thank you very much indeed for that. Our business editor, Kate Moody.